Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Blue Heart webcast. I'm your host, Lieutenant Joe Pangaro. So recently, we've seen the release of the autopsy reports for the 4 young people murdered by Brian Cronenberger in Idaho. Now, I've done other earlier podcasts about this particular incident, this crime, in the past. So you want to go back and look at them on the list of shows that we did, because the autopsies are going to help us reveal some of the things we discussed. So one of the topics that I had talked about was the fact that when we examine a crime scene, we have to listen to the crime scene. Right? And I've described this before. What's that mean? Listen to the crime scene. The crime scene will talk to you as a criminal investigator if you listen for what it's trying to tell you. All right. So when we can hear people tell us what they did, or we can find other evidence, witnesses, people who can describe what they saw and heard and whatnot. But a lot of times we know, just like in an interview, when you're interviewing somebody, understanding body language is extremely important, because a person can be saying one thing, but they have different meanings to what they're saying. They're trying to hide something. They're concealing something from you, right? So that's also a very recent episode we did, and I've gotten a lot of requests, so I'm going to do more on body language, but that's another story. So one of the things I had talked about in the past is understanding what the crime scene tells us. And at the time, I told you a couple of case-based histories of walking a crime scene. You know, when you first get there, you're excited. You know, you're anxious. You're not sure what do you have. You want to make sure you do everything right, whether you're a patrol officer, a detective, or whatever. You want to make sure you do the right thing. So your approach to the crime scene is very important. In this case, obviously, it was a hellacious crime scene, and we're not always used to going to crime scenes like that, right? We don't go to brutal homicides every single day. Now, of course, some of you do in some departments where you have this every single day. In Chicago PD, hang in there, brothers and sisters. But the reality is, most of us don't go to these kind of crime scenes every single day. When we get there, they can be shocking. They can be shocking to the senses when you see what someone has done to someone else. So one of the things I talked about is understanding, when you look at a crime scene can tell you a lot about the mindset of the person who committed the crime by what they did in the crime scene. All right. So you've heard me talk about it multiple times, but in my book, I got a couple of them here. In my book, The Investigation, which is a story of a brutal double homicide that I investigated, where the victims were stabbed multiple times, then their head, hands, and feet were cut off. A shocking crime to go to, a crime scene to go to, but it told us a lot about the mindset of the person who did it. And in the Idaho murders case, we have the same thing. So one of the things we had talked about is the concept of a knife. A knife is a personal weapon. It's not like a gun. You get somebody from across the room. A knife, and the act of killing someone with a knife, even stabbing them, not intending to kill them. Sometimes that's a consequence of what happens. But the stabbing of another human being with a knife, there's a lot that we learn there about the person, the kind of knife they used. Okay, so we talked about in the past that the knife, in certain crimes where there's a psychosexual component, the knife can serve as a psychological phallic symbol. It's power. So what you've heard me say over and over and over again, that sexual assault is really not about the sex. It's about the power over the person. You are controlling their body. You are controlling everything about them, and you're violating them. And you have all that power, right? Well, when it comes to the next level of this, when someone is using an edged weapon, a knife, to stab somebody repeatedly, you have to look at that and say, was there any kind of a sexual component here? So I have posited in my writing and a couple of things that when I first heard about this crime, I said to myself, well, nobody was sexually assaulted. Nothing was stolen. We just had an individual go in and kill 4 young people brutally with what evidence examiners had determined was a large knife, a K-bar knife, I think they call it. It's a very large knife. And they were stabbed repeatedly. Well, just like in my case, in my book, the investigation, the perpetrator had a psychosexual component, jealousy over the mother of his child. And he used the knife to stab her 33 times, repeatedly stabbing her. And then he cut her head, hands, and feet off and killed another person in the house the same way. But when we look at this, the Idaho murders, when we see these autopsies, we know that these 3 young girls, or attractive young girls, were attacked. And one of the girls had a boyfriend in a house with her. And he was murdered also. When I saw this, I thought it seemed to me that as a investigative hypothesis, an idea that I had in my head, based on what I was told about the case and the crime scene, that there could be an element of incel activity here, right? An incel, we remember, an incel is a person who considers themselves, self-identify as involuntarily celibate, which means they have a hard time procuring sexual partners of the opposite sex that they want to be with. They feel inadequate, or they can't get them, or they're not good looking enough, or they don't meet the criteria. They don't have money, they don't have power and prestige, they're not the most beautiful, the most handsome, and they get frustrated. And this has expressed itself as violence towards people in the past. So when I heard this, and the key element for me was that there was nobody sexually assaulted and nothing was stolen, then why? What would possess a person to go into this house and just brutally murder these 4 people? Well, you have to say some kind of a grudge, some kind of a problem, a drug debt, or some other kind of an interaction with these people, that this was payback, or this was a warning, or this was something. Yeah, there had to be some connection. The benefit we have now is that we now can look back. We have an individual who was arrested and who has pled guilty to the 4 murders. He did it. We know he did it. Now we can look into that person. Now, it would have been much better for all of us in law enforcement if the judge had demanded that he explain why he did what he did and how he did it, step by step by step. That would have been good for all of us investigators, because we would get some insight into his mentality. But the judge didn't do that. So unfortunately, we don't have his specific mindset to look at and to examine. We could have asked him a lot of questions, could have found out more about his background, and found out, is there an incel element here? Is that what part of this was? Was he thwarted by these young girls that he wanted to connect with, right? Date, go out, have sex with, whatever. And they thwarted his approaches. Well, there's some information in the case that he may have approached one of the girls on the college campus and she rebuffed him. And could that have started the cycle of him stalking them, following their police, and then going in there to hurt them for rejecting him, which again is expressed in the record of people who have this incel ideology in their head. And so one of the things that we had talked about in the past, your crime scene speaks to you. When 2 people get into a confrontation, if I go in to rob your house and I don't have a gun, all I have is a knife. So I bring a knife with me for protection and for intimidation, maybe, right? If you wake up when I come in, I could get away from me, I'll kill you, whatever. So if 2 of us get into a confrontation, and in me trying to get out of there because you woke up, you're fighting back, maybe you're going to beat me and I got to get out. I don't want to get arrested. So I use the knife to stop you. So I would, express that with a stab, 1, maybe 2 stabs, slashing to keep you away, to buy time for me to run. Right? That's what you would think. In this case, we don't have that. In this case, we have multiple stabs. And as I'm going to read some of the autopsy information, where the wounds were targeted, I think tells us a little bit about the psychology of Mr. Cronenberg and what he did. All right. So let's see. Some of the information that came out here is, and I want to mention the victims because they deserve us to remember their name. We remember the killer's name. We should remember these victims: Madison Mogen, Haley Goncalves, Zena Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. So the report says they all died from multiple sharp force injuries. So the report also indicates that 3 of them were asleep when they were attacked, based on the evidence at the scene. The scene will tell you that. You know, if I see you coming, I'm going to jump up and fight you, or I'm going to do something to be moving around. In this case, the evidence led the autopsy doctor and the investigators to think that 3 of them were sleeping. One of them fought back. One of the girls fought back. The autopsy confirms that all 4 experienced significant pain and suffering based on the attack. All right. It appeared to be done with a K-bar fighting knife, which matches the sheath that they found at the scene. All right. So the medical examiner is Dr. Veena Singh. And those are the three big important points. She says Zena Kernodle fought back based on the evidence in the autopsy. The attack was fast and overwhelmingly violent. The 3 victims were likely asleep when it began, and one victim, Zena, fought back. Now we can tell that. How can we tell that? Well, if I don't see you coming and you come into the room and you got a knife and you start stabbing me, I'm going to react to the pain and the wound, right? You know, you cut somebody's throat and they grab their throat. You stab somebody in the chest and they wake up, they're going to grab their chest. If I see you coming, I might put my hands up. I might try and stop the knife, stop the attack. I might come at you. So if we think of Nicole Brown Simpson, who was murdered by O.J. Simpson, multiple defensive wounds, they're called, on their hands as they're trying to defend themselves from this attack, right? Well, the same thing we have here. Each person, we'll go over each person. So Madison Mogen. Madison suffered 28 stab wounds. Injuries to her neck, chest, and upper body penetrated major blood vessels, and obviously combination of deep thrusts and slashing motions, suggesting a sustained force. And so now here's what it seems talking to you. This autopsy is talking to you. Deep thrusts show anger, right? Show force of attack. Slashing, right? You're slashing at people. 28 stab wounds with a very large knife. That's the phallic component. So you start to put together, was this person attacking them because he was upset with them? He couldn't get with them. This is a very serious attack. 28 stab wounds. That's a big time set of anger. So that informs us about his mindset. Kaylee Goncalves, she shows there were multiple stab wounds and blunt force trauma to the face, including a broken nose and a knocked out tooth. There were signs of asphyxia, choking, indications that something may have been pressed over her mouth. Injuries suggest that the killer used more than one type of force. So he might have hit her with the back of the knife. But again, multiple stab wounds on this young girl. Zena Kernodle was awake. This was determined by defensive wounds. She saw it coming, etc. She had defensive wounds on her hands and her arms, classic signs of a victim trying to block or grab a blade. Her injuries matched the timeline on the nearby security cameras. There was a thud, a struggle, and someone say, someone's here. So somebody was awake, obviously there. And she had multiple stab wounds on her as well. Ethan Chapin. Ethan suffered multiple stab wounds to the neck, chest, and extremities. The autopsy indicated he was attacked while lying down. He never stood up. His jugular and subclavian vessels were severed, leading to rapid blood loss. Okay. So This is what we deal with in law enforcement. We have to understand these things, understanding the mechanics of an attack, understanding the mindset of the attacker, understanding the victims, what they perceived, how did they react to it? Were they awake, not awake, unconscious, whatever? These are all important factors as we investigate, because it's going to help us understand motive, which is going to help us to ask the right questions in the interview. We want to determine, is it a want crime or a drive crime? This clearly appears to be a drive crime. This person was driven to do this. All right. What does the autopsy tell us? The weapon. All right. The wounds across all 4 victims were consistent with a single-edged, fixed-blade combat knife. All right. The depth, the angle, and the pattern all match the K-bar profile. So when they look at the actual stab wounds of the victims, they can actually determine the angle of the attack and all of that. The killer's behavior: targeted, repetitive strikes, high force, close contact attacks, a willingness to engage multiple victims in different rooms. This was not a chaotic frenzy. It was a controlled, deliberate violence. So he went there to do this. He brought the weapon with him. Now, what we don't know is, did he go there maybe to confront one of these 4 people that he ended up killing? Was he going to use the knife to intimidate that person, sexually assault them, control them? We don't know any of that because we didn't get a chance to interview him about it. But we can see that the crime scene, the wounds on the victim, the scene itself will talk to us and speak very loudly. So we have to look at that. Let's see. The human cost. Obviously, these 4 young people lost their lives. My point here, and point to this video, is that when we see the crime scene and the activities, it helps you form your investigative hypothesis, your idea of what could have happened. What that's going to guide you in what kind of evidence you're going to look for, the questions you're going to ask. It's going to help you interpret other evidence that you have to figure out motive. Why did the person do this? How did they do it? Is there anybody else involved? 1 person, 2 people, 3 people? We look at that. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy for these victims and their families. But it's a learning tool for us in law enforcement, as difficult as that is. So I wanted you to go back and look at the crime scene videos that I've done. Go back and look at the use of force, the knife as a phallic symbol. Go back so you understand all of this, because it happens more and more and more, and you're going to come across it more and more. And you want to be sure of what you're doing. It's going to help you be better at what you do, right? So thank you for being here. I really do appreciate everybody watching. Make sure you like, you follow, subscribe, all those kind of things, and tell your friends about it, right? Tell your friends about it, and we have a lot more to come. So be safe out there. Do the right thing every day. Thank you, my brothers and sisters. See you down the road.